What's up, people? It is Dave Duncan back from Metal Epidemic for another album review. And for this review, Duncan and I have been checking out the new album from German metal duo Mantar.
Yeah.
The band's new album, Pain is Forever, and This is the End, will be released on July 15th via Metal Blade Records. So, technically, I suppose this is album number 5 if you include the covers album that they released in 2020. But the band have taken a slightly different approach on this release. Vocalist guitarist Hanno said, "Well, we have pushed the limits on all of our releases. Going into the new record, they had a clearer idea of what we wanted to be more than before. I just knew I wanted to write stronger songs in relation to songwriting and rely less on being an extreme metal act that only convinces through a certain sound or general heaviness." With Hanno prolifically writing riffs at home in Gainesville, Florida, and throwing away whole albums worth of material, and
it's crazy Hanno for you.
And Eric working in Germany, the record came together over several months, and it was a wall-to-wall hard work. Nothing came easy for this album. Everything sucked, and I hated most of the process. I wrote it, and we recorded it during a very bad time, and even though COVID had not much of an impact on us, of course, the general fucked up mood in the world and the industry had an impact on the record. I'm not going to lie, everything was very tedious, up to a point where I literally questioned everything, and we were damn close to quitting the band. He states unequivocally, "I thought I just lost it. There was no more fun anymore, and with every song I came up with, there was a period at some point where I thought it sucked. Then again, I had moments where I thought it was the best we had ever done. It was bipolar almost in a way. It was rough, and it took a serious toll on me and Enric that I'm still recovering from. Then again, I come from the school of no pain, no gain, which obviously is bullshit and self-destructive, but unfortunately, that is who I am." The drums were recorded in their beloved old hometown Bremen, Germany, and guitars were tracked as usual in Hanno's house in Florida. After recording their instruments on different continents, Hanno and Eric entered the studio together in Germany to record vocals and backing vocals respectively, and decided to take a different, more daring route in terms of production. With the previous albums, I was so focused on making the band sound exactly as we would sound live. That is cool and still important, but this time I wanted to make an album that is overall entertaining and not just a 45-minute live set. He proved countless times that we have no problems at all convincing in a live setting, so I had to gather some courage to produce a little more, mostly in order to entertain myself as a songwriter and producer. So, interesting, this one, from Mantar. We obviously just checked out a track from the album recently, did a little reaction to it.
Yep.
We're all quite interested. Kyle had never obviously heard the band before. Duncan and I had some kind of experience listening to them before. But we were all kind of excited as to what we're going to get on this album, because that track did sound a little bit different from what I remember.
It's not the Mantar I remember, but then they've been off my radar for a little while and released a grunge cover album since, which I think we reacted on the reaction to that news with kind of, that don't make any sense. That's literally not what they sounded like in the past. So, and then we heard Odysseus, which is the closing track, and yeah, like it's in there, and they ain't hiding it either. It's like the grunge vocals particularly shine through quite a bit, and then it was a kind of well, it's the closing track. Is that I'm being playful at the end here? Will the rest kind of fall into that level of kind of just really raw viscerality that they've got on all their other releases? And Dave, what did you think?
Yeah, this is a different tone, definitely for Mantar compared to that 2018 album. I went back to that, The Modern Art of Setting a Blaze, just to kind of go over it again in my head, because when I heard Odysseus, I was like, I don't remember this at all. Like, this is not what I remember. But I think, as you say, I think that covers album that he did in 2020, Grungetown Hooligans 2, has clearly had an effect on the writing for this album. There's a huge grunge influence on this album that it didn't really show itself at all on the 2018 album. which is definitely more extreme, more blackened in comparison to this new one. But I think to an extent the grunge influence makes this album slightly easier to digest. Don't get me wrong, like Pain Is Forever and This Is the End is still a heavy album. Like,
oh fuck yes.
Get confused here. Like,
for two people, yes.
Yeah. Oh yeah. This is still very hefty and doom and sludge, with some kind of like blackened tinges here and there. But I think that the arrangement and the structure of the album feels almost more conventional or traditional in a way. Like the inclusion of the grunge element gives the album a completely different tone. It's a bit more balanced, I think, especially with the melody and the vocals as well. It kind of adds more light to the rest of their sound. The guitars aren't quite as constantly intense because of that more almost kind of like melodic grunge undertone that it has. But I think that also helps you keep kind of engaged in the album. Their last, like when I went back and listened to that last release, I was like, oh god, I remember how exhausting this album is. Like it doesn't let up at all. It just kind of pummels you from start to finish with no real like time to breathe at all. Here though, there's definitely a lot more play with dynamics where the guitars will actually take a complete backseat and be more minimalist, aren't the main focus at all. And a lot of the guitar work on like even like Grim Reaping or Of Frost and Decay, a lot of the guitar parts are there for atmosphere or to make the track feel more sinister, and they're often kind of backed up by like organ sounds or a bit of synths that help kind of strengthen up that darker vibe. Rhythmically as well, I really like the fact that they've pulled some of that kind of grunge rhythm into these tracks as well. The one that kind of stood out to me the most was Piss Ritual, which is a great song title, but the tempo and the rhythm of that is very kind of 90s grunge, typical kind of that kind of guitar strumming rhythm that the grunge has. But even when they do like venture into that territory, they still make sure it sounds very Mantar. Like it just doesn't sound like a different band. This still sounds like Mantar. There's still an extreme streak going on with there's that track has blast beats and there's really like bleak chords thrown in for good measure as well. But I think all of it added together makes this an album that metal fans should be definitely checking out. I think musical workings aside, that I think the vocals are also more interesting on this release. I think he's using more of his voice on this release in comparison to previous albums.
Also sounds like it hurts.
It does. It really does. Yeah. It's just like pure rasp. It's just wow. But again, I think a lot of that has been spurred on by the grunge kind of covers album they did. I really like the way that he uses that kind of raspy sound of his voice, but it's also got a little bit of a kind of tonal kind of thing going on as well. It gives the tracks a bit more kind of depth. It doesn't sound like just someone is screaming his lungs out for 40 minutes. I think his voice sounds more like it has more kind of layers to it on this release, which again just adds to the whole appeal of the album. And that's kind of similar with the production as well. That the productions, like on the last album and the previous release, they always are quite a high quality, but I think this one feels way kind of better balanced for me. I think that there's some really nice like drum tones on this. Guitars are really thick, but they're not like too abrasive or overly distracting either. I think this is my favourite Mantar album to date. I'm really glad that they didn't decide to just pack it in. Like I think if anything, it shows they've got so much more to give and should definitely keep going. I think they're at a point in their musical career where they sound the most unique they've ever sounded, and probably the most accessible they've ever sounded as well. But they haven't watered down their sound at all. They've just kind of refined it and added in some new elements, which I really liked. So from hearing the single Odysseus to hearing the album, I'm not disappointed in the slightest. I'll definitely come back to this album throughout the year. Yeah, really enjoyed it. What about yourself? What did you think?
I fucking loved this. This is so a Duncan album, honestly. It's like everything like I could have wanted.
Yeah.
They've just managed to capture. I mean, like right from the off, Egoist though, When you're listening to the opening track, just like initially when that kicks in, you hear the riff and the drums come in, and then the vocals come in on the verse, and I was like, right, it's cool, and then like it plays for a little bit, and the guitars don't sound full or anything, and then you just get hit with this fucking wall of like guitar noise, just for 2 bars. And then it cuts back out again and then back in again. I was like, oh my God, you just give me this all the way through it. And the thing about it is that quirky, grungy vocal tone that he has, which is, it really sounds like, I imagine, kind of what a more kind of sludgy Kurt Cobain would sound like. Because it's on that register. Yeah. But it's clearly like more raspy and more aggressive. It doesn't make an appearance at all on that first song. So when I was listening to it for the first time, I was like, maybe it just is that Odysseus track. And then, like, the next song, Hang 'Em Low So the Rats Can't Get 'Em, that kicked in, and it's all over that track. Fucking wicked chorus, great song composition, biting guitars, like, really, really well written. And you mentioned it before, they're experimenting with stuff in the back that isn't just the guitar sounds. So you're getting like a little bit of organ, you're getting a little bit of synth, but it's not predominant in any way. Out with a track like Odysseus, where it it features more at the forefront. It's just basically sitting at the back as another tool to kind of push up everything you're hearing, and it's used sublimely. It's not overly complicated. They're not doing something that'll be difficult to recreate live. They're kind of just using it as most 2-piece bands do, as a way to boost what they're doing. And it really, really, really works. You've already mentioned it. The drumming, the drumming is so fucking solid on this release. Just great. And never at any point does it feel like it's... You mentioned, I think it was on the reaction, that you love 2-piece bands. I'm the same. I love 2-piece bands because I always kind of feel like the drummers in 2-piece bands get it.
Yeah.
They understand that there's no room for kind of a virtuoso playing. They are there as a key component that must make this work.
Yep.
And as a result, I can't think of many 2-piece bands that I've ever heard where the drumming isn't just fucking solid as a rock from start to finish. At times, this reminded me a little bit of, there's an obscure band that no one fucking listens to except me that are on the kind of sludgy scale, called Mose Gazanticus. Who I fucking love. Who I remember they released it was like an EP. Now the key thing about it is the vocalist plays a keytar, which is why I love them, right? But they were a two-piece to begin with. Either all the guitars and all that as well. But they had that kind of on the sludgy register thing going on with them. And then they released an album called Gift Horse after that. And Gift Horse is fucking amazing, woefully under-listened to, like really, really, really under-listened to, and vocally and musically in parts kind of similar to this because of the keys. So like it worked really, really, really well together. I think they were signed to Relapse, which would make sense because of the body of bands that are on that. But they were just pushing things in a really, really interesting direction, and it never really stops. Like through Grim Reaping, I just found myself getting more and kind of infatuated with the vocals. I think his actual vocals themselves, the lyrical delivery is brilliant. The lyrics themselves have poignance, have depth, and have meaning. I really found myself being kind of captivated by that sound. And then the album just never really lets up in any way, shape, or form, and they never really dwell on any one aspect. It's clearly an all-encompassing one sound for the album, but there are tracks where the grungier tinges are more predominant. There are tracks where they're not on it at all, and the mix and the composition on the album works great. And then you build into, you've already mentioned the Frost and Decay, but when Walking Corpse kicked in, I was like, this is just different level now. Really, just found myself. And there's a repetition of a particular phrase on that song that just keeps going and going, and it's really, 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 really well done. And then through New Age Pagan, and I was at the point where I was like, I know I love the last song, I know I love that already. So is their album to fuck up for me as a listener now. And they didn't do it. Like, Hoarder is maybe the most unassuming song on the whole release, but it's fucking great. So it's the one that has no airs or graces, but then the closing track is the one where it kind of feels like it's like the great summation to everything on the release. Like yourself, I'm accustomed to Mantar being like exhausting to listen to.
Yeah.
Not because they are doing blast beats or, you know, like intense black metal riffing or anything like that. Just that they only had that kind of one level, and that one level was just full on in your face. It's that live sound that we're talking about capturing. Just always felt like Switch to 11 constantly, and there were exhausting journeys to go through. I think this album is the one where the band have realised that actually you can be just as heavy as anything you've done before, but you can be much more interesting by just exploring the way you approach your songs and the sounds that they've done. And I think it reminds me, there's a lot of bands that do covers albums or vocalist as a side project or something, and when they come back, there's an instant impact on it. It's almost as if they try something which doesn't have the band name on it to see if it works, and as soon as it does, they have a new kind of a new weapon in their arsenal. I think about like bands like Tool, for example. The jump between something like Anima and Lateralis is fucking huge, and it's because he did a perfect circle in between. For better or worse, the jump between Slipknot's Iowa album and Volume 3 is huge because he did Stone Sour in between. Like bands that get an opportunity to explore a different way of doing something, a different vocal styling or a different approach to writing music, or sometimes just revisiting the thing that makes you fall in love with music or be inspired to lift your instrument. Remembering what that is can sometimes bring a new kind of a coat of paint to the band you're in, and that is this album. Like it's a wash with it, and it's not done for like, no one's going to tell me that grunge is back in, because it fucking isn't. So it's clearly because they went back to the well, drank deep from the well, Dave, and realised the well tastes good. And that's what's on this release. I just felt like spin upon spin, I just found myself kind of falling further in love with it. I think it is one of the most honest releases that I've heard this year, of a band that are just like, and without even knowing, because I don't read the press statements about all the turmoil in the background, they say that, I think that, you know, like chance, or, you know, it favors the, you know, the fortunate, you know, when you get a chance to really push for something which feels daring and out with your comfort zone. It can go one of two ways. You'll either be eternally disappointed, or you'll reap the benefits and rewards of something that you should, you know, was always going to be a gamble to see where it was going to fall. And that's this album. I can't, like, I would be very upset to hear that people are falling off the Mantar bandwagon, because I think this is the band leveling up into a different stratosphere without compromise to the elements that got them there. Like, they're not, this is not a sellout album, even if it is more accessible.
No, not at all.
But, you know, what is a hugely interesting, kind of very raw, like, soul on the sleeve release, and everything about it, like even down to the minutiae of the production, is fucking great. I absolutely love this album. I think it is brilliant. I want to see them on this tour. I'm gonna make you upset and say this might not actually be the year of hardcore. This might be the year of sludge. Like, in the last month, we've had a brand new album from Cave-In, which we didn't expect, which was fucking colossal. And, you know, less than a month later, brand new album from Mantar, which we didn't even know they were working on anything. And it's fucking amazing. Imagine what the rest of the year's going to bring us, Dave.
Imagine.
So yeah, I'm all in.
Nice.
Everything's getting pushed across the table on this one, and I don't even think you need to ask me for my score. Because fucking guess it.
Yep. Nice one. Scoring for me, I'm sitting at a 4.5. This is a very high scorer for me as well. I think. I mean, it's like it's close to perfect. It really is. I really enjoyed it. I think the new elements that they've brought in absolutely work 100%. And like you, like I think this would be awesome to see live. I really do. I think they would really bring it. Like if they sound like this on the albums, and we've heard the previous stuff where they've tried to make their albums sound like they're live. Yeah, it's a band that I definitely need to see in a live environment for sure. But yeah, thoroughly enjoyed this. What about yourself? I'm going to ask anyway, but what was your score?
It's a 5. I think this is it's the best thing the band's put their name to. If this is the best thing they ever do, I think they've achieved something that's very difficult in the genre they're in. It's very easy to sound like every other band in Sludge. Like very, very, very easy. Even if you're not trying to. They've always been on the extreme end of that, but somehow they've taken that extremity, made it more viable, made it more engaging, but not lost anything, and further cemented themselves as sounding completely different.
Yeah.
In that genre. I can't think of any band that has, and I think it's more vocally than anything else that they've done it, on that level. It's more on the vocals, but there's plenty of guitar choices, kind of background noises and all the rest that they've done to accentuate their sound. And it's not to take anything away from any of the other songwriting, but vocally this album is it's on a completely different level to almost anything I've heard within the sludge genre this year. It's fucking great.
True, like when I was kind of taking notes for this review, I usually try and jot down a few bands that are kind of similar or sound like the band, and I was really struggling. Like I was thinking, like, all right, so there's a wee bit of them and there's a wee bit of that, but there wasn't a band I could say, oh, well, they sound like this band. Definitely not. Like they're definitely in their own lane in terms of like what they sound like.
Yeah, and you've got like, and once again, not shots are not being fired here, but when you think of bands like Black Tusk or Red Fang, or like, there's a whole genre of people where it's integers of difference. Yeah. Between the bands, and then you hear Mantar, and it's like, well, there's an ocean between these bands now. And they also have, like, not that I want to keep stroking these guys off here, that like they're like, it's fucking amazing on social media. So if you're following them on Facebook, just see them stand awkwardly. I think they posted a picture today of them both in kind of woolly jumpers and an alpine background, which, like, I just fucking love that shit because it just is quirky and it's different and it's personable. It's like I say, this is like, we are already, like, the listeners in account, depending on when this drops, we may have already recorded our top 10 of the year so far, and Mantar has like overturned the cart. Like, I had my list was pretty locked in, and now it's kind of up in the air again. Thanks, Mantar.
Yep. So this one drops on July 15th on Metal Blade Records. Links below to the Facebook, to the Bandcamp. Let us know what you think. Stick some comments in below. That is the review. Thank you for checking it out. We'll be back with another review very soon, but until then, take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.